Well, welcome to one and all. We are now, as we work our way through the Gospel of Matthew, we are on Matthew chapter 13, which is the parable of the sower. It's a very important parable for a whole lot of reasons. First of all, the message that it gives, but along with the message, Jesus gives a lesson on how to interpret parables, how to understand parables, and also another layer to this, he talks about why he teaches in parables, gives us one of the reasons why he teaches in parables. So a lot of stuff here. So let us begin. And then we're going to try to get through the whole thing, so I'm going to try to not wormhole too deeply into anything. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down. And the whole crowd stood on the beach, and he told them many things in parables. We'll stop there. That same day, I try to come up with new ways to say this, and I don't know if I've got a new way to say it, but I'll put it this way. It is better to think than to not, okay? When you read things, think about what it's saying, and when I say that, it may sound kind of snarky. I'm being snarky to myself because I have to remind myself. I would just blow past. That same day, Jesus went out of the house and sat beside the sea, and not really given it thought if I weren't doing what I'm doing now, which is teaching. And when I'm preparing to teach, I force myself to think about everything. That same day. What did we end with last time? We talked about Jesus' mother and brothers coming and asking to see him. That's what we ended with. He had been teaching. He'd been in the same place while he was still speaking. When he teaches about the unclean spirit going out from him. So, this gives us insight into something. It says that same day. It's a good clue that he probably did what he said he did, what I said he did. He went and visited with his mom and brothers. He went and talked with them. He spent time with them. And so a few hours later, whatever it is, but still that same day. It didn't say, and then he went out. No, it says that same day. It's a small thing, but Matthew is very meticulous with detail. He's telling us something there. He spent time with his mom and brothers, and then he went out of the house and sat by the sea. The sea is a natural place to speak because in most places, and there by the Sea of Galilee, let's see what we've got here. We've got, okay, that's just a picture of Jesus on a boat teaching the people standing there. But we also have and some other stuff. Oh no, I made it. I made my thing disappear, so we won't look at that. I had a picture of the Sea of Galilee. Doesn't matter. In most places, the shore rose up at an angle that was pretty obvious. Okay, so it created a natural amphitheater for him to teach, especially if he got in a boat. And then he could be back a little ways. People could come all the way to the shore and he could teach and everyone could hear him. Great crowds gathered about him. We should notice that detail too. It wasn't 100 people on the shore. It was a great crowd. That's why he got in the boat and he sat down so that he could sit there and teach. And he taught many things in parables. We're going into a section here. In Matthew's organized scheme here, his outline, we're going into a section of parables. where Jesus is teaching in parables. Now, remember, this is important with the Gospels. Jesus taught a whole lot more than what we have written down. And if you're teaching a lot, then you're doing something else. You're repeating things. Just because one crowd heard it in Capernaum doesn't mean the people in Bethsaida heard it or the people in Tyre and Sidon. So he repeats things, probably comes out a little bit differently each time. That explains why the same parable can sound one way coming from Luke and another way coming from Matthew. And for those of you out there who have been listening to me teach, some of you for your entire life, you've heard me teach the same things again and again and again. Why? Because they're important. But each time I teach it, it comes out a little bit differently. But what Matthew does here is he takes core parables that Jesus taught and he puts them all together here. And probably Jesus did teach them in this instance, in this sequence, but I'm just trying to convey, if everything that he had taught in 3 years was written down, you couldn't carry the Gospel of Matthew around. Okay, it would be too big. What is a parable? What is the word for parable? He began to teach them in parables. Well, let's take a look just for fun. Verse 3, there it is, parabolais. That's plural, dative. But anyway, it's a plural. Parable. The word comes from, the idea is that you put you throw two things down next to each other. You're casting them down, you're throwing them down next to each other and say, see, that one is like this. This is like that. In what way? Well, let me tell you. A parable uses something, and if you heard that moan, it wasn't me. My dog Yukon is in the room, and when Yukon is sleeping and he moves, he talks. Jesus, a parable, uses something that people are familiar with and taught something else, taught something they didn't understand, that they didn't get. But Jesus constantly used everyday things. And what he uses here is planting seeds. And in this agrarian society, where even if you were not a farmer, chances are you had a garden, how many of these people do you think had sown seeds? In the very way that Jesus describes here, a lot. Master teacher, he is the master teacher, and he uses things that his audience was familiar with and that they saw all the time and that they did for themselves because it made it easier for them to understand. A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seeds fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. They'd all seen that happen. Other seeds fell on rocky ground where they did not have much soil, and immediately they sprang up since they had no depth of soil. But when the sun rose, they were scorched, and since they had no root, they withered away. Now, why is it that they sprung up immediately? Because they had no depth of soil. Because imagine a bunch of rocks with a thin layer of soil over it, thin layer of soil. That soil's very warm. So the seeds would sprout very quickly. That's something I have to have somebody who knows more about that explain to me. They didn't need anyone to explain it to them. Other seeds fell among the thorns. And wait a minute, my thing jumped again and I lost my place. Here we go. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. He's saying, think about it. Think about it. And He who has ears will be talking about what he means by that. We'll go into the details of the parable when Jesus explains it. But at some point later, because Jesus taught a number of parables, and chances are he gave some time in between for people to noodle on them, to think about it, to think it through. But afterward, after the whole thing, his disciples come to him. Then the disciples came and said to him, "Why do you speak to them in parables?" That's a good question. That's a good question. And that can be understood in a number of ways. They're trying to learn how to teach and how to be like Jesus. They wanted to understand why he used parables, but also they caught on that there was something mysterious to this. And so he explains to them, and he answered them, "To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given." Okay, let's focus on the given. Focus on the given. The only way that I can understand the Word of God in the way it is intended, with the purpose for which the Spirit authored it, the only way I can understand that is through faith. And faith is given. Wisdom is given. Understanding is given. Every time before I begin to teach, what do I pray? Give us wisdom. Give us insight. Let your Spirit help us understand these things. Say it in different ways. It's only through the power of the Spirit that we understand the Word. And what does that tell you about when you're listening to the Word, when you're reading the Word? Isn't it funny? He says something about our day that I lead with, listen to the Word rather than read the Word. You need to be praying. Reading the Word without prayer is like Cheerios without milk. Okay, it's what came to my head. But you need to have both. You need to have both. Absolutely. You're not going to understand it without the Spirit. Pray that God gives you understanding. To you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven. The truth of the plan of salvation is referred to as a mystery. It's only open and available to those who have faith. If you don't have faith, you cannot understand the parables. So when he says, "But to them it has not been given," he wasn't talking about the crowd in its entirety. He wasn't talking about all of them. He's saying to unbelievers, because who was there on the shore? Who was there listening? Who was probably right up close at the front? Pharisees, the scribes, the Sadducees. They were always there. They were always listening. They were trying to catch him in what he said. But to them it has not been given, for to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. If you're listening with faith, you're going to have more given. It's going to be poured out on you, a full measure, pressed down, shaken together, poured out in your lap. But to the one who listens and doesn't have faith, he's not going to get anything. He's not going to receive anything. And by stubbornly not receiving the word, by not accepting the work of the Spirit that's working on him, but rather resisting it and pushing it away, he ends up in a worse state than before. Does that sound familiar? Yeah, Jesus had just talked about that. That is why I speak to them in parables, because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, or nor do they understand. Again, he's talking about the unbelievers who were there and listening. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that says, and again, Matthew is what? Matthew is the gospel of the Jews. He's always pointing out where scripture is fulfilled. That's a key aim in what he is writing. But he quotes Isaiah. He quotes Isaiah, and we go, oh yeah, Isaiah, that's one of those big books in the Old Testament. Yeah, there's a bunch of Jesus stuff from Isaiah, because I know around Christmas in church they read passages from Isaiah that were prophesying about the Savior, passages in Isaiah about Good Friday when Jesus is dying and suffering. Isaiah, it's a big deal. It's 66 chapters of a big deal. I'll read what it says, but we're going to go deep on it. You will indeed hear, but never understand. And you will indeed see, but never perceive, for this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them. Now, that is somewhat familiar to you because you've heard it here, okay? And could be people out there who are a lot more in tune with the Old Testament than the average believer. But I spend time talking about regularly that we need to get in their mindset in order to understand this. Okay? This section from which Jesus quotes, when they heard it, the whole chapter came to mind, because that would have happened with a whole lot of Isaiah, but it wasn't just Isaiah in general, it's Isaiah 6. And I'm going to read it because in their heads, they heard all of this because they knew it so well. All of this context came to mind of what was going on when Isaiah had his vision of the Lord, his call from the Lord, his throne room scene in which he was commissioned as a prophet to go and preach to a stubborn and stiff-necked people who weren't going to listen. And the next thing that happens after Isaiah 6 is he gets sent to the godless king who would not listen. So there's a message in just where it's taken from. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Envision this stuff. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to another, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, Here am I. Send me. Send me. Amy aquí. LBRY, Senor. That Spanish contemporary Christian song. Here am I. Send me. And he said, Go and say to this people, here it comes. Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull and their ears heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and turn and be healed. Then I said, How long, O Lord? And he said, Until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is desolate waste, and the Lord removes people far away, and forsaken places are many in the midst of the land. We'll stop there because running out of time, but you get the idea. When they heard this quotation from Jesus, when the 12 heard this, that is exactly where their minds went, and they got it. He's talking about preaching the gospel to rebellious people who, because they lack faith, are never going to see, and because they lack faith, are never going to hear. He can talk and talk and talk, and they're not going to hear it. And later, he talks about not casting your pearls before swine. Jesus was only teaching the believers when he taught with parables. Everyone else could be there and listen. It was only for them. It's like teaching in code, and that's what he was doing. And he goes on. And in that context, having just gone straight to the throne room, he took them straight to the throne room, the judgment hall of God, there with Isaiah, holy, 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 where the hymn comes from. He clues them in. What you are experiencing is greater than that. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets, like Isaiah, and righteous people long to see what you see and did not see it, and to hear what you hear and did not hear it. He's telling them, you're better off than Isaiah. And that's something that they never would have thought. And they probably had a hard time getting their minds around, but he just said it. You're seeing the fulfillment of God's plan of salvation. And you, not the 12, us, we have even more than they did, because we have the full counsel of God written down for us in one place, with the prophetic revelation in the book of Revelation about that which is to come. Appreciate what you have. Appreciate what you have and dig in. Value it. Treasure it. Because he's going to talk about in a minute what happens when you don't. The parable of the sower explained. Hear then the parable of the sower. Here, I'm going to tell you about it. Listen up. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, they reject it, they don't get it, it doesn't matter to them. The evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. All's on the path, you can envision the path all packed down. Birds come and take it away. If you don't act on the word through faith, it's gone. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Oh, yay, rah, I'm all fired up. I'm with Jesus. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while. And where does it go wrong? Where does it come apart? And when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. Hey, this Jesus stuff is great until there's a price to pay. Hey, this idea that I'm forgiven and I'm saved, that's awesome. But whoa, wait a minute. Everybody hates me? Where's that coming from? In chapter 11, verse 6, we're only in chapter 12, verse 21. Jesus said, and blessed is the one who is not offended by me. Here we've got an example. As for what was sown among the thorns, and this is the one we need to worry about, because most of us, we've been around long enough. Our faith wasn't a flash in the pan. It's been here. The word wasn't snatched away because we rejected it when it was sown upon us. This is the one we need to worry about. And it is a regular recurring theme in the teaching of Jesus. As for what was sown among the thorns, this is the one who hears the word. Hear the word, yes. But the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. If the stuff of this life, if the stuff of this world choke out the word, it doesn't matter how long I had it, it will be unfruitful. And this deceitfulness of riches, Jesus talks about it all the time. Deceitfulness, the cares of the world, all the stuff here. Let it go. It doesn't matter. It's trash. It's garbage. It's going to burn up in the fire. And the only thing that endures forever is the word of God that remains unto eternity. That is the gold that endures the fire. And the fire is coming. And it's not just a metaphor. The fire is coming. Satan is coming, and he's coming hard. The lords of hell have been at work for a long time, and the deception of the end times is almost unthinkable. Jesus says it's so hard that hardly anyone makes it. That if it were possible that even the elect wouldn't be saved, it's that bad. But thankfully, it's not that way. All we have to do, and it's important that we understand how bad it's going to be. It's important that we understand how strong that storm will be, because it encourages us to put our roots down deep into the waters of life, into the rock, and hold on. And that way, this applies to us. As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit. You know how you bear fruit? You share it. You preach it. You proclaim it. You live it. Bears fruit and yields, in one case, 100-fold, in another 60, and then another 30. That's what wheat does. It one tiny little seed can produce a huge, huge crop. You can be that seed just by being faithful. And you no doubt think, how in the world can that apply to me? I'm just me. I know me. The good thing is, it's not about you. It's about the seed and the one who waters and the one who sows and the one who blesses and causes it all to flourish and produce fruit. That's a God thing. We all did the thing in school with a Dixie cup and a seed, and you plant it and you'd watch it germinate and sprout. It's an amazing thing to see. It's a God thing. And Jesus takes that idea, that picture that's his doing, that's his work, that creation of life and the flourishing of life and the bounty of life, and he applies it to us in our faith and our life and what we do. So don't get hung up on yourself. Don't get hung up on yourself. I am a veritable gold mine of adamant shortcomings, and that's okay, because Jesus uses me anyway. All I am is the soil. And you know what the soil is made up of? Rotting stuff. That's what the dirt is. Go closely examine it. It's rotting, dead stuff. Jesus takes the rotting, dead stuff that's me and causes wonderful things to grow. It's all his doing. Okay, we managed to get it done in just almost exactly half an hour. Next time we're going into another parable, the parable of the weeds, and it's not the weeds. Homework. Everybody go look up tares, 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 because it's not weeds. Weeds doesn't begin to do it justice. I want to thank you for listening. I want to encourage you. Give us a thumbs up. It really does make a difference. I also invite you to subscribe. And if you subscribe, then make sure and hit the notification bell so that you are made aware when we put out new content. Please share this video with others. Share it on your social media platform. Send it to anyone you think might benefit from this teaching. And finally, come and pay us a visit. This is our website, decodingthedeception.com. If you know our name, you know the website. We've got all our Bible teaching videos out here, as well as a host of other resources to help you be informed so that you can decode the deception. This is Matthias 76. Together, we are decoding the deception. God bless and have a great day.